My name is Michael Haas. I'm excited that everyone's here. I'm excited to see some new faces. I'm excited to see some old faces. I'm excited to see Sarah Weaver, our guest of the hour. I've got some great stuff to share with you around bathrooms and parking passes and other housekeeping, and then I'm going to invite Sarah onto the stage in just a few minutes, and she's going to get to the meat and potatoes that everyone is here for, which is learning how to create wealth through real estate, specifically the stuff that Sarah has really crushed it in, midterm rentals. I know she's going to tell a lot of her story, and it's a pretty incredible story, and I'm going to try not to feel too jealous about the incredible experiences that she's had. And I think that we're all going to learn a lot, and then also just be inspired by how cool of a life we can live when we're taking advantage of some of these things like investing in real estate. So before we get going, my name is Michael Haas. I lead the House Hack Seattle team, which is one of the sponsors of this event. I see a lot of the other sponsors rolling around. I know we're all super excited about investing in real estate, and a lot of the people that helped me put on this event are super excited about investing in real estate too, and also have businesses that support real estate investors. So we've got Scotty T right back here, who's got Right Meow Dumpsters if you're doing any kind of renovation, especially if you're doing kind of a mid-size renovation and need something small and quick. Scotty's got a sweet dumpster company that you should reach out to him. Got Israel Lopez back here at Certain Lending for hard money, lots of other lending needs. Israel is also a contractor and just is a insane wealth of information about ADUs, DADUs, projects, financing, so definitely hit him up if you haven't already. Kara Rozansky, my go-to conventional lender over the last however many years, is right back there. She's a rock star, and I can't imagine running this business without having Kara helping on the financing side. We've been through so much together and so many crazy deals, and not once has anything fallen through. Do a little salt over the shoulder. And David Weiser at Backyard ADU may not be here right now, but I'm going to send out everyone's contact info after this event. Definitely hit David up if you're trying to do a detached ADU. He is building some super cool, super usable, super beautiful designs in a world that has a lot of schooners, which I'm not in love with. So David Weiser is a good resource for that. Everyone, please welcome Sarah Weaver.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Woo.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's actually only my second time to Seattle. So I've quite literally traveled the world, but only here twice. So thank you, Marty and Michael and Jess, for having me. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit about how to build a really cool life. Who here would like to have a really cool life? Sorry, what? Yeah, let's try that again. I want to hear a woo. Like, do you guys want to have a really cool life? Woo! Yeah, okay. I thought Seattle was supposed to be fun. So that's exactly what I want you guys to think about as I'm talking about all of the cool things that I did. Don't be jealous. Just make your...
Be inspired.
Well, inspiration's also like one of those, like, let's be motivated. No, yeah. Like, take a ton of action after you find out kind of what's possible as we talk about these different things. And then I'm here for you guys. I am here on my own accord. Michael and Jess did graciously let me stay in their Airbnb for free, and I really appreciate that. But otherwise, I'm just here for you guys. So if you have questions, ask. As you'll learn, nothing's really off the table. You can ask anything about money. I also see some familiar faces. I spoke yesterday in Bellevue and the day before at Amazon, and I see some of you in the crowd. And so I do expect you guys to ask some questions because you're hearing some of this stuff twice. So, all right, but let's get started. I will throw this slide back at the end as well, but you'll have my email, you'll have my Instagram, my robot or my assistant will get back to you. No, I'll get back to you. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. All right, so can anyone relate? It is 2024. Rates are not quite where we want them. We still love you, Israel. There's nothing you can do about it. Rates aren't quite where we are. Your price point here in Seattle is a little bit high or a lot of it high? High? And it's hard to cash flow. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was in the same boat a few years ago, but in a different scenario. I was writing offer after offer, yet no one was accepting my offer. Has that happened to anyone else? Yeah. We go to the webinars, we come to the meetups, we do all the right things, we read all the right books. Thank you for reading my book, or at least purchasing it. But yet our offers are still not getting accepted. We don't have the portfolio that we want, and we don't have the cash flow that we need to quit our job. Do we have any aspiring quitters in the room? I mean, don't raise your hand so fast. Like, is your boss here? But yeah, I really wanted to quit my job, and I wanted a life of freedom that was full of travel. For me, travel is my number one thing, and I thought real estate was gonna get me there, but it just didn't quite happen as fast as I wanted it to. So can anyone relate to this? Yeah? Okay, excellent. So I knew, there was no doubt in my mind that real estate was it. Some of you guys might still be like, I don't really know. Somebody brought me here, I'm still not quite sure. Whereas some of you might know that real estate is it. That is how you're gonna build wealth. You love it, you hate it, you think about it at night, you think about it when you wake up, but yet that is the thing that's gonna get you the life that you want. That's exactly where I was. And I thought it was gonna take 10 to 15 years. I thought if I just buy a house, every 1 or 2 years, probably house hacking, because I didn't have a lot of money, I would get there eventually. And to my surprise, it happened, and it happened a lot faster than I thought I would. So just before this, Michael and I had a quick chat about kind of who's in the room and your experience level, and I actually switched up my slides a little bit. And so we're gonna talk briefly about my timeline, because if any of you have heard on a podcast or follow me on Instagram, you may hear very sexy headlines like she went from 3 units to 15 units in 92 days. Okay, that's where you guys clap. No, I'm kidding. And so those things are true, but just like life, there's an Instagram versus reality. And so I'm gonna walk you guys through my timeline, not as a humble brag, but just to show you what's possible, especially when you have great lenders in your pocket or great agents sending you great deals. And then more importantly, when you have a community that's like, hey, you've been coming to this meetup for like how many months and you still haven't bought anything. And I think a combination of those 3 things really made all of this possible. So, all right. Oh, that's going to be fun every time. All right, so who am I? I'm Sarah Weaver. I've traveled to actually 55 countries. I went to Greece 2 weeks ago on a whim because I get to do that now because I bought a bunch of real estate. But more importantly, I've been to all 7 continents. And that 7th continent, I actually took real estate investors with me. So if anyone has heard of my retreats, I actually help you go on bucket list adventures as a tax write-off. Because who here has owned real estate for over 3 years? Raise your hand, keep them high. Who here feels like they still pay too much to the IRS in taxes? Yeah, well, I would love to help you pay me instead of the IRS, but then get to go on a badass trip. So Liz in the back, where did we go on an invested adventure?
Guatemala.
And did you love it or you love it?
Yes, I love it. I definitely am looking forward to going on another adventure with you, Sarah. I don't know if your suggestions of bringing Ethan to Antarctica at 9 months old makes sense, but
At the time, it was questionable advice.
eventually you will see me again.
Excellent. So yes, I did take real estate investors to Antarctica, and yes, it was a CPA approved trip. Amanda Hahn is actually my tax strategist, and so I pay the big bucks to make sure that our itinerary is airtight. So if you guys want to come on an adventure and hang out with real estate investors, I highly recommend. It's a very great way to spend your time. I have worked remotely for 8.5 years. Do we have any remote workers in the room? Yeah, quite a few. I joke my dating pool got a lot bigger after COVID. So a lot of you work remote, but I've been doing it for quite a long time, 8.5 years. And then I'm fully nomadic, and I have been doing that. It'll be 6 years in January. That's just a fancy way of saying homeless. So when you go to these events, everyone asks like, oh, where did you come from? Where do you live? And I'm like, I don't live anywhere. And in Seattle, people are like, oh, that's so cool. I want to do that. In the Midwest, you get middle-aged women like, that's okay. So yes, I'm homeless by choice, but I do have quite a few mortgages. I own 19 rental units in 4 US states. Do we have anyone from the Midwest in the room? Oh, all right. I hope I don't offend you guys. I'm also from the Midwest. I grew up in Kansas City, and I own in Kansas City, Omaha, and Des Moines. As a world traveler, my dream was to own an Airbnb in Nebraska. So, thank you. So those are where my units are, both furnished and unfurnished. So half my portfolio are ran as midterm rentals or medium-term rentals, and half my portfolio is still long-term. If something makes sense as a long-term rental, I love it. It is sit it and forget it. But I didn't write a book about long-term rentals, so we got to talk about midterm rentals as well. And then lastly, my 3 businesses, so not just real estate, but I also run a coaching program. I have Invested Adventures where I take people on adventures. And then you guys will hear about my design firm as well. And they, more importantly, fit my lifestyle. So one of the things that was really important to me when I got into real estate was I didn't want to change my lifestyle that drastically. So I think a lot of you are going to hear the prices in the Midwest or in the South, and you're going to think, oh my gosh, I really want to buy there. But then you also might be thinking, yeah, but I don't actually want my life to change that much. Like, the reason I'm getting into real estate is to have less work, not more. So make sure you ask me any clarifying questions as to how the hell do I run these businesses as well as self-manage these 19 units and travel full-time. I do all of this. I lose my sanity so that you can at least like find a portion of this and you can do it without losing your sanity too. So let's talk about my timeline. We're going to do this a little interactive. Marty poured me a lot of wine, so that the presentation is going to get really fun at the end. So when I say whoa, I want you guys to say whoa. Let's try that. So whoa.
Whoa.
Oh, sexy. Okay. So I became fully location independent, which is what I called being a digital nomad, back in 2015. And that was my dream. I wanted to be able to live anywhere. I wanted to be in Spain, but be on my laptop 8 hours a day, but still be in Spain. So definitely Instagram versus reality. And so in 2015, I made that dream come true, and I actually worked within the real estate industry. I was a real estate agent for about 5 minutes, learned really quickly that was not for me. And then I started working as a real estate recruiter. So I placed administrative staff with real estate agents. So has anyone watched HGTV? Bravo? Yeah, all of those assistants, I placed them. So some of those guys on Selling Sunset, I have in my cell phone. And no, I do not ever want to talk to them ever again. Because I helped them find their assistants. That business model is brilliant because they go through assistants like they go through, well, you know. So I did that, and I started to notice the difference between rich and wealthy. Does anyone know the difference between rich and wealthy? Yeah, what is it?
Rich, you like make a lot of money, but wealthy, you have a lot of assets, so your net worth is high.
I love it. Anyone want to add to that? That was perfect. What was your name? Brittany? Did I hear something? Yes, Kara?
Time.
Yes, and freedom of time. So I noticed really quickly, especially with the type of people that I worked with, like, oh, they have really nice things, and they may even go on really nice vacations. I wanted that for sure. But I realized that they had no freedom of time and they didn't have any assets. The amount of credit card debt or the amount of hours that they needed to keep working and the amount of stress that they put on their assistant, I was like, I don't want to do that. And I noticed that the wealthy people, they all owned shitty rentals in arguably shitty places. And I was like, this is very interesting. And that plays a big role further on. So in 2017, I bought my first investment property. Is it Cecilia? Let's put our hands together. She's buying her first investment property tomorrow. Woo! This is big. This is big. So I bought my first one in 2017, and I thought, whoa. Oh, good job. I was like, I can do this. So I bought that first house for $217,000 because it was in Prairie Village, Kansas, a name so cute, I can't make it up. And I made the huge sacrifice of leaving my pretty cool life in Denver and moving across I-70 to Prairie Village, Kansas. And I moved into it so I could house hack. And as some of you that house hack learn, it is worth it. And it can suck all at the same time. And so mine took me to Kansas, and I learned though that once I renovated and I filled all the rooms, I did rent by the room. I kept calling them my tenants, and my friends were like, they're your roommates, like stop calling them that. But what was cool is I was the best type of roommate, and because the best type of roommate is the roommate that pays rent but is never there. Am I right? So I immediately bought a one-way ticket to Europe, and I used my 90 days in the Schengen, and I was gone all summer, and I thought, this is it. I have made it. I was making $49,000 from my day job but I was staying in hostels in Barcelona, and I was like, this is the life. And I owned a house. And so I thought, man, if I can just do this every 1 to 2 years, this is gonna be great. And so I followed suit. In 2019, I became a full-time nomad. I bought my second investment property, and I bought a one-way ticket to Argentina, because por qué no? And I thought, whoa, I'm really doing it. Like, this really is working. I own 3 doors. I'm making $51,000, but I'm living in Brazil. My apartment was a 6-minute walk from the beach. It was $400 US. There were cockroaches, though. That was a problem. But otherwise, it was a pretty amazing life that I was building for myself. And I finally secured that second property. And I thought, wow, I might be able to do this faster. So I heard a podcast of a real estate investor who was really like living the life that I wanted. I'm sure, raise your hand if you've ever heard a podcast where you're like, I want that person's life. Yeah, so I got on the phone with her after some hardcore LinkedIn and Facebook stalking. I found someone who knew her, and I somehow convinced her to have a phone call with me. And then a couple weeks later, I convinced her to hire me, because she ran a mastermind, which you guys are like the land of masterminds. Like, everyone in Seattle has a mastermind. I think I could name like 4 people that have a really large mastermind that live here. And I worked for her. And the reason I tell you that part of the story is because I think it's a really great strategy. If you can earn while you learn, that is like taking the elevator to the penthouse. I took my investing knowledge from like 1st grade to the 12th grade just by working for her for about 5 months. And so if you have the privilege of doing that, I highly recommend it. And if she lets you move to Bali while you work for her, definitely take that job. And that's exactly what I did. I ended up in Bali the day that Donald Trump decided that he wanted to close the US borders. I was doing a visa run to Malaysia, you know, just a casual Tuesday, and I realized that countries across the world were gonna close their borders. So I panicked. Was everyone in the US or in Seattle during that time? March 2020, all over? Where were you?
Where were we? No, we were.
So I knew that the countries were going to stop shutting their borders, and so I picked a country. So I applied for a visitor visa in New Zealand, Australia, and Singapore. And 12 hours later, I was on a plane to New Zealand, thinking, okay, I have a 90-day visa. I'm just going to wait it out there. I'm still working for the woman running her webinars, you know, learning about real estate investing, networking with lenders, starting to like think about my next market. This thing will blow over. Well, that's not quite what happened. So in 2020, I lived in a van, because I also bought that the day I landed, and I just wrote offer after offer. And unlike the successful real estate investors around me, or what felt like everyone else was getting their offer accepted, I just couldn't get my offers accepted. Anyone else in that scenario? You're just like, nobody's accepting your offers. Oh, everyone's very successful? Okay, end of presentation.
Good agents.
Great agents, there we go, I like that. So I was writing a lot of really silly offers. So I was writing offers under asking, and more importantly, I was almost only writing offers that were FHA. So that I wanted to snag one more house hack, even if that meant leaving my life in New Zealand. And funny, no one wanted to accept those offers. And my biggest problem is that I was looking in too many different markets. So can I see a raise of hands who invests outside of Seattle? Okay, so a handful. So I was looking in Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, San Antonio, Texas, Georgetown, Texas, Des Moines, Kansas City, a few different places in Iowa and Nebraska. And believe it or not, my real estate agents weren't taking me very seriously. Just like dating, we can like tell that our person is like playing the field, right? And so these real estate agents weren't sending me the best deals. They were sending me like the shitty deals that no one else wanted to buy. And then I was writing shitty offers, and shockingly, that wasn't working. And so I finally made a change when my mentor that I worked for at the time just told me to knock it off. And somehow those 3 words became some of the best advice I could have gotten, because I zeroed in and I focused on just one market. And that's when everything started to change. So in 2021, I went from 3 units to 15 units in 92 days, which is also a great podcast headline. And I thought, whoa. And I also invested in 2 new markets, Omaha and Des Moines. I'd never been to Des Moines. Has anyone ever been to Iowa? One person? Okay. So I had never been to Des Moines, but yet I bought there. And I added 12 units in that one summer. I also used hard money for 2 of the properties, private money for the down payment, and did a long distance renovation and BRRRR in my first refinance all of that summer. To say I was stressed is an understatement, but I did have an incredible lender. He's actually standing right here. I've never given this presentation talking about certain lending while he's right here. So let's give Israel a round of applause. Because his team looked at that deal, and that's how I was able to sleep at night, is I was like, okay, I don't think they would have lent me if it was a bad deal. So not only did, my mentor and other people in the mastermind look over the deal, but that was how I kind of slept at night. But then I would wake up in the next morning just kind of in as much panic as I was the day before. And that's when my accountability group became absolutely key. And so you guys don't need to pay to be in a mastermind unless it's mine. Please join my mastermind. But you don't have to pay to be in a mastermind. Just grab 2 to 3 people here and form an accountability group, because I was terrified to do my first BRRRR. And now I'm so glad that I did, because it was actually 2 duplexes, so 4 units, and it was a near perfect BRRRR that has now cash flowed. It's about $1,200 a month, even as a BRRRR. And so I would have never done that deal had my accountability group not talked me off the edge multiple times, because as you can imagine, I was kind of doing a lot at once. So to fast forward you to today, in 2022, I picked up 2 more deals, both duplexes, both in Des Moines, and I used JV partners. And so I'll show you guys all the numbers, all the math. How the hell did she finance this? I will answer those questions, but before I do, does anyone have a question before we move on? Oh, we're gonna be quiet?
Are all the units, was it just you by yourself, or did you do it with partners?
So the last 3, so one of the 4plexes that I bought in 2021 was my first partnership, but the rest was just me. So the BRRRR that I did with hard money, that was just me. And then I did 1 more house hack. Yeah, but then my most recent 3 deals, they were with JV partners or joint venture. Yeah, good question. All right, so I buy boring buildings and boring markets so that I can live a pretty exciting life. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing. I've talked to a few of you that are house hacking here, have incredible equity. I think it's brilliant, and I think that you should be buying out of state. And I think you should do it in a way that you don't lose your mind or lose your wife. And I think that those are possible. So I'll tell you a quick story about this house. So this is my very first house, the one in Prairie Village. Isn't it cute? What's really cute is that they're tearing these Cape Cods down, and they're building those mega mansions on every square foot of the lot. So I bought that, as I told you, for $217 in 2017. So it's easy for me to remember. They should have sold it to me for about $230, maybe $240, but I did not have a good agent at the time. I acted as my own agent, and I was door knocking. Has anyone done door knocking or driving for dollars? Yeah, it's worse than online dating. But I was doing both at the same time. So it was just rejection, rejection, rejection. And I was able to secure this for $217, take the entire upstairs down to the studs, and turn it from a 3 1.5 to a 4 2. It was also my first and last time I ever did that, because renovations are also Instagram versus reality, especially when you're doing a live-in flip. Yeah, not ideal. But anyone want to guess what those teardowns are, or the new builds are selling for today in Prairie Village, Kansas? 6? Yes?
480.
480. Anyone else?
520.
520. We're getting closer. Anyone else?
550, I guess.
Oh my gosh, you guys have some faith. People really do want to live in Kansas. They are selling for $1.3 million.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I owe $160 on this thing, so you better believe that all my time and love and effort that I put into this, yeah, we're gonna tear that sucker down and we're gonna put a new build on it eventually. But for now, I'm cash flowing over $1,000 a month. And so I'm just gonna let it ride for a bit longer because I just saw something list for 1.7 million and it sold for 1.5. So yeah, stop being so snooty about Kansas, okay? So I could have just stopped there, moved to Brazil, but I didn't. I instead moved into a van. Some of you probably own really like nice Sprinters. You guys work in tech. I already told you my salary. I lived in that. Her name was Penny. And then this was me at the end. All of my life fit into that blue suitcase. And I'm standing directly behind it because I'm actually in a cast. I broke my leg actually after doing an Instagram live after I spoke with Bradley. I don't know if he even knows that. We did an Instagram live that morning and then I fell down the stairs. Not related at all, but seeing your face, like it makes me, I'm trying to like you. But my mom actually didn't even know that I broke my leg, so that's why I'm hiding it behind that suitcase, because I just wanted her to be happy I was coming home. But this really was just like a normal work day. I'm actually emailing a lender. Sorry, it's not Israel, but I'm emailing a lender here. You can see the van. And then that was just like a normal weekend. But if anyone's ever done van life, it's also Instagram versus reality. Because as you can imagine, I cannot stand up in this. And there's no shower and no bathroom. And yes, van life. But it looked great. It looked like this. It was beautiful. I posted these on the internet, and I also was posting all of the webinars that I was going to. So that's why I'm telling this part of the story, is every time I attended an event, obviously virtually, you guys are doing it in person, I would snap a photo, I'd tag everyone. That's actually how I know a lot of the Seattle investors, is I was attending Leica's like monthly webinar for years now. And I would tag everyone. And when you tag everyone, they start to follow you. And then you start commenting. And next thing you know, you have all these investor friends that probably think I live in Seattle. And so that was what I was doing. And that becomes important because that was how I raised private money for the first time. When I got someone to lend me the money for that down payment, it was solely because he was watching me on Instagram. He'd see me post things like this to my feed. By the way, I had 900 followers at the time. This was like way pre-book, pre-anything. And I was posting this, but on Instagram stories, or even here, I was posting like learning about DTI, like here's cash on cash returns. And he finally messaged me and his exact words were, "What the fuck do you do?" And I followed Amy Majori. Does anyone follow Amy Majori? And she told me to say, "I help people get double-digit returns on their money." I had never done anything like that, but I wasn't completely full of shit because he was reaching out because he thought that's what I did do. He thought I was in real estate, and lucky for me, he had been lending to flippers in New Orleans, and the flippers started to dry up. And he had this money, and he started to get used to making 8, 9, 10% return on his money. And so he was reaching out to me to see if I could offer him the same opportunity. I quite literally bought Matt Fairclough's Raising Private Money book on Audible and listened to it that day in the van. And then I reached out to my real estate agent and I started to find deals because all of a sudden I was like, I have money. I don't have to continue to offer FHA. I can now use certain lending, offer hard money, and then use his money as my down payment. And it all started to open up. And that only became possible because I was posting on Instagram. So, highly recommend. But the reality still was that I looked okay, but all I wanted was to own more properties. Because I was joining all of these webinars, and everyone around me seemed to be really successful. Actually, I met Liz at that time, and I was like, oh my God, they own so much real estate. Like, how am I ever gonna do this? And that was when I started to learn about house hacking. And so I had done it once, I had done it twice, and I was like, it's not gonna be very fun to do it a third time because I'm gonna have to sell the van and move to the Midwest, but that's what I was willing to do. And then I had a sneaky feeling that furnished rentals would play a really big part in what I did. Yet, I didn't want to be a short-term rental host. Who here owns a short-term rental? Who here is annoyed that they own a short-term rental? Yeah. So having these 2-night, 3-night stays was going to cramp my style if I continued to self-manage. And for anyone that doesn't have a good manager, we're always managing the manager, right? And so I was like, how do I get increased cash flow without the headache? And that's when I started to learn about the midterm rental strategy. What's cool is that I actually had learned about it years prior at a hostel in Minca, Colombia in South America, because there was like a swarm of travel nurses. And I was like, wait, what is this travel nursing that you do? And what they would do is they'd get 13-week assignments in some US city. They'd work that, they'd maybe go do another assignment, and then collectively they would all take an assignment off and they'd go travel in South America. So I happened to like meet them in a hostel. I was like, that is brilliant. And so when I started to get into real estate, I started to think, you know who would be a really good tenant? Those cute girls that I met in Colombia who would live there for 13 weeks. They go work 12-hour shifts. They're not partying in my unit. They're professional tenants, as I like to call them. They've been doing this a while, and so they're probably not gonna wreck my unit. Later, I found out from my cleaner that they basically don't even use the kitchen at all because they're so tired. And so my units don't have a lot of wear and tear when I have this tenant pool. It turns out I was right. So this is what my portfolio looks like today. I'm gonna go to the next slide and then I'm gonna lose a lot of you. On the next slide, I'm gonna show you exactly how I financed them, what the down payment was, and then I will take questions. Again, I've really moved the slides around to my normal presentation, so we will talk about midterm rentals, but I wanna talk about how I financed all of this. This is a little up-down duplex that I bought. Oh yes, I told Marty I would tell this story. So when I bought this one, this is my most recent property. It's a duplex in Des Moines. I had just closed on this duplex 2 weeks prior. So I actually flew there to furnish both of them because I, again, wanted to have another midterm rental. But I did something pretty stupid. Gosh, I don't even know how to tell this story. So I was standing in this window doing my final walkthrough with my real estate agent, Chase. Happy to give you his information. He's fantastic. And I'm like, Chase, again, I'm 2 days before closing, right? I'm doing a final walkthrough. Who here's ever done a final walkthrough? Yeah, okay. I had never done one before because I'm always gone. So this was pretty fun until I asked this question. I said, Chase, who owns the lot next door? And he goes, and I go, he's like, you do, you moron. And I was like, wait, you're telling me that I bought this thing for $180 and it comes with a lot? And so sometimes I do things a little too fast. I don't quite look at dotting I's and crossing T's, but it turns out to be a pretty good mistake. Until I had to call my partner that I bought this with, and I was like, do I try to act cool and like twist this story, or do I just tell her that I just completely didn't know that we were getting a whole entire free lot? So I went with the latter. I was just honest and truthful, and thankfully she went, cool, what are we gonna do with it? And so now we're in talks with the city about putting a triplex on it, and yes, we bought it for $180,000. And it was completely turnkey. I bought it from a flipper, so it's completely renovated. So if that doesn't piss you off, I don't know what will. Okay, so this is what I spent on down payments. So where do you guys want to start?
Are your JVs 50-50 or how do you structure?
I did do it 50-50, yeah. So she asked, are my joint venture partners 50-50? So yes, so how I structured it was they brought the down payment. The first time I had to bring, this arbitrary number, I don't know why. But then I learned that I don't have to bring anything. So my partners bring the down payment. They get the loan in their name. At the time, conventional loans were very good rates. And then we split cash flow 50-50. And then when we decide to sell or 1031 exchange, they'll get their down payment back. And then anything left over, equity, we're gonna split 50-50.
And you manage it?
I manage it, yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right, what other questions you guys got? I usually do this at the end of the presentation, but yes.
If you need to put more money into it at some point for like a rehab, or how do you do that split?
Yeah, great question. So he asked, how do you determine like later when there's capital calls, we'll call them. which are very common if anyone's doing syndications these days. So I have a conversation with them about what I foresee the next 3 years looking like on that property. So turnkey, that one, I was like, I don't think we're gonna have much going on, but I would feel more comfortable if we get to 15,000 in the checking account, and then we have a quarterly meeting and we decide what we wanna do with the money. Highly recommend partnering with people that have a shit ton of money, whatever shit ton is to you. That partner, every time I call her, she's like, I don't care. She's like, do whatever you want. So we have done one owner distribution of about $3,000 each. On this property, it cash flows about $3,000 to $4,000 a month. So we are able to get quite a bit of cash in that checking account. So we not only have done multiple owner distributions, but we've completely paid ourselves back, not only for the down payment, but also the furniture. But we still keep about, I think there's like 17 grand in there because it's a fourplex. So there's 4 AC units and 4 water heaters. But thankfully, there hasn't been anything unexpected, so we haven't had to pull extra money. But good question. Yeah.
So how do you find these partners? Is there a specific place you look for, or you just happen to find?
Yeah, so he's asking how I find the partners. So I have learned a thing or two after having 3 of them. One is don't have 3 of them. There is such a thing as like too many cooks in the kitchen. I wish that I had one really, really wealthy silent partner. I have one really wealthy silent partner and 2 other partners. And so how I found them, the first one, holy cow, she was like, talk about right place, right time. I had just bought this fourplex and had a nice conversation with the fourplex next door and got that under contract, but realized I only had, like basically it would have wiped my bank account out. I think the down payment would have been about $80,000. I had maybe $87,000 in my bank account. So I go back into my unit and I see my friend Mary sitting on the floor helping me put a TV stand together. And I think, Mary has a job. And that was how Mary became my partner on that building. The second one, I told you guys, the guy who sent me a very kind Instagram message, he became my second partner. He had been my private money partner on these 2 deals, my 2 burrs. And I said, wasn't that fun? Aren't I an amazing partner? And he was like, what do you want? And I was like, I have a deal. Do you want to stay in the deal for 3 to 5 years? He said, yeah, sure, let's try it. And then my last partner, and I think this story will help you guys out the most, was I trained my ear to listen for opportunities and more importantly, listen to what people weren't saying. So I attended a mastermind. It was not my own, it was someone else's. And there was about 15 women there and we did hot seats. Has anyone done a hot seat before? So everyone gets up, one person gets up and shares a challenge or a struggle in their business or in their portfolio. And more or less this woman said, I make a lot of money. I like work 68 or 80 hours a week, like definition of golden handcuffs. I'm paying a lot in taxes. So my tax strategist or my CPA told me that I should do this short-term rental loop thing, but I can't even imagine like adding any more to my plate right now. I'm overweight, I'm overworked, I'm single when I don't want to be, and I just need help. And all the girls said, buy a short-term rental. And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything because it's not my mastermind. But here's what I did. I got out my phone and I texted my agent, Chase. I said, Chase, I just found a shit ton of money. Go find me some deals. That was on a Saturday night at about 8 p.m. after a few glasses of wine. And by Monday morning, as we were departing the cabin or the retreat, I had a great deal sitting in my inbox. And I called the girl because I knew she was driving home. I said, hey, I didn't want to say anything, but I think what the girls told you was terrible advice. I could feel your body energy. You were like repulsed about the idea of owning another short-term rental. And then anyone that understands the short-term rental loophole, self-managing that short-term rental. So I have an idea. Why don't we partner on deals? I'll find them, manage them, furnish them, and we can split equity and cash flow 50-50. She was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And I said, great, because I've already emailed you a deal. I screenshot my deal analysis. All the information's in there. Let me know, are you in or are you out? And an hour later, she called me. She was like, hey, I actually pulled over. I'm super impressed with you. Let's do it. And so that was how I got my third partner. And I think that hanging out with people and talking about real estate and then hearing what their needs are, I think that is the lesson. And that's how you find really good partners. You might be that partner. You might be the person with a lot of money. So find someone with the muscle and the hustle and the grit who you actually can stand a conversation with them and have them be that partner for you. But I think getting in the room is half the battle. So you guys are already doing a lot of the work by just being here. Excellent. Any questions about that? Yeah, great question. So he's asking, how was I able to do 3% down? I was willing to live in these houses. So this was my first house hack. 2 years later, this was my second house hack. And about a year and a half later, this was my third one. So what's really nice about this one is that's my first single family that I told you guys about. This second one is a duplex that I bought in Kansas City. And just the tenant downstairs covered the mortgage, but I'm also a fool, so I even had a roommate. So I was cash flowing about $800 even while living in it. And then that third one was a fourplex, and that's when I started furnishing the units. So I lived in my unit, but the moment I had the ability to send a notice of non-renewal to one of the other tenants, which is why I invest in landlord-friendly states, Washington, and I was able to remove those tenants, I would start to furnish them and turn them into midterm rentals. And then these down here, this was 20% down because that's what you required. And then these were 20 or even 25% down, but my partner brought the money. Yeah, good question. Yes. Oh gosh, my favorite question, Nick. I am not an attorney. This is not legal advice. I just play one on TV. And I recommend figuring out first, how are you going to fund it? So when I used hard money, they required it in an LLC, but I went under contract with, and again, this is not legal advice. You have great agents to advise you, but I put like Sarah Weaver or assigned. That's how I write every contract so that I could just assign it to my LLC once I opened it. But I didn't even have an LLC at the time because I was looking in so many different markets and I was not making very much money. It would have been really expensive to open LLCs in all these markets. So I waited until I went under contract. Then I opened an LLC, and then I did buy a few of them in an LLC. For the partnerships, again, this is not legal advice. Please, please, please find an attorney who lives or practices in the state that the property's in. But what we do is we have an operating agreement and an LLC 50-50 partnership, and that's how we run those. Yeah, good question. I have no social life. No, I have 2 Filipino assistants that I found on Upwork.com, and between the 3 of us, we manage them. I did have a US-based assistant, and because I'm recording this and she follows me on Instagram, I'll just say it didn't work out. And I learned that my Filipino assistant was better and a lot cheaper. And so between the 3 of us, it is working. Do I want to double my portfolio in 90 days? No. And so it's not a perfect solution. I will be honest about that. I would love to have a full-time employee. They're both full-time, but I would love to have a full-time employee where I could just say things like, I trust you, do whatever you think is best. Whereas they're coming to me with high-level stuff. But let me give you guys some examples of what they do handle. So we get a message from an Airbnb guest. The Airbnb message goes to my team. They have it on their computer, they have it on their phone. They are instructed to answer within 45 minutes or they're fired. No, I'm just kidding, but really. And let's say it's a plumbing issue, because plumbing issues tend to be the most common. What she does, her name's Julie, my assistant. Julie goes to a vendor list that we've created. It's a fancy way of saying a Google spreadsheet that basically has a list of all these vendors. She knows who to contact first. Because there's notes in there on who to contact. Even says like text him, call him, like how they want to be communicated with. And she's contacting the plumber. Then she's contacting the tenant, or better yet, if I have a great plumber, the plumber contacts the tenant, or in this case, even the Airbnb guest. And I'm not involved at all. If the invoice is less than $300 and my VA has confirmed with the tenant that the issue is fixed, she pays it. So yes, she has access to my credit cards. They are saved in LastPass, and she has access to all of that because I also have a bookkeeper that checks my books. So there are like checks and balances, but at some point you just gotta delegate. Yeah.
Just share the
Yeah, absolutely. So he's asking about permitting. Again, I invest in landlord-friendly states. So without being political, these are all red states. And so, thank you. It's a lot funnier when we're not like days away from the election. I like feel uncomfortable. But I also set Google alerts. This is something I recommend. And so I set Google alerts. So anytime there's any type of change there's something in the news about short-term rental regulations or any variations of those words, I get a nice email, or better yet, my VA gets an email. But I've built a really cool community with the other real estate investors in the area. And I've done most of that remote. So I've been to Des Moines twice, but I have relationships with these people because I found them on Facebook, and we share our plumber, we share a cleaner, we share an agent. My agent is like my eyes and ears of the ground. And then I love midterm rentals because that 30-day tends to be a sweet spot around any short-term rental regulations, as long as you're not in an HOA. It's usually dictated by amount of days. And so they'll say things like an HOA may say like, you're not allowed to rent to anyone for less than 180 days. Well, then it doesn't really matter if it's midterm or short term. 180 days is a long time. But a lot of the cities are saying 30 days or less. Or what's really interesting about this one is how the regulations were when I bought it was as long as I got permission of the neighbors, it was gonna be okay. And had I done that, I would have been grandfathered in. Now they've cut permits completely. And so in Kansas City, Missouri specifically, the good thing is that thing cash flows as a long-term, and I wouldn't furnish it because it's not a very nice neighborhood. But that's something to keep in mind, that if you have the ability to go through the permitting system, do it, even if it's a long-term rental, because then you're grandfathered in some of the time. Yeah, good question. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Remember your timeline.
Yeah, great question. So what I've been doing, I've been a private money lender, and I've been doing syndications, both as a LP and a GP. And I'm trying to decide where I want to house hack next. So I have been kind of searching what cities I want to live in, like what makes sense. Do I house hack in Denver and lose money every month, but it's cool because I'm going back to Denver? Or do I do one more in the Midwest? That's kind of where I'm at. But I'm also looking to go bigger. So one of my partners, we'd really like to 1031 exchange our duplex into something bigger. So that's really the plan. But this year I've been focused on I was joking about my social life. It's amazing, whoever I said that to. I lived in London this summer. I went to Paris for the Olympics. I was in Greece 3 weeks ago. And so I also just kind of pressed pause on analyzing deals. So when those agents who I still have relationships with, when they send me deals, I'm directly sending them to my coaching clients. And so my client, Paul, he joined my program 3 months ago. He already has 3 rentals that he's either closed on or he's under contract on, and they're literally just handed to him. Eventually, I will step back in the arena, and Paul I'm gonna take the best deals, but that's kind of my focus right now. Yeah, absolutely. So it's so dependent on where you are. So for example, I've talked to some of you, you make great money and you don't necessarily need or want to quit anytime soon. Go for appreciation. I wanted to quit my job basically the first day I ever had a job. And so I needed cash flow in order to do that. And so I went cash flow all the way. Now, how am I investing? I'm not, as you can see from purchase price, yes, this might seem like a really shitty property, but that was actually a really nice duplex in an up and coming neighborhood. I wasn't buying $50,000 houses for the same reason that you're saying. It would take 15 years for it to appreciate into anything. But I found that sweet spot of, I'm getting on average 7% appreciation, which is the national average. I know that sounds terrible for you guys here in Seattle, but that is the national average, and I'm not below that, which makes me happy, but I'm not investing for appreciation. If I wanted my portfolio to be worth, a lot more than 2.4 million, I would be buying differently. And so moving forward, what I'm focused on is I want properties where I'm not getting phone calls about plumbing. So whether that means I go in and I completely gut it, which is probably what I'm more interested in doing because I like value add, or if I'm buying things turnkey, but I'm looking for cash flow until I hit a certain cash flow number. I'm at about 10,000. It's anywhere between 10,000 and 14,000. I always like to tell lower in case you ever, but that's considering 5% capital expenditures, 5% maintenance and repairs, 10% property management, even though I manage, and 8% vacancy, and I'm still at 10,000 every month with even this like dinky little houses. And so that was my focus. But I think you need to ask yourself what's important to you. If you make great money, then appreciation all the way. I think Liz and Ryan are actually probably the first people that I had spoke to that were buying expensive places like in an expensive market. And I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. But I wasn't there like in my investing journey. I needed to do this first. I don't know your market well enough, so I don't feel like equipped to advise on that. I think, again, you have to really sit down and like, so a story that I told yesterday was I had a coaching client who came to me. I do like one-on-one sessions, and he came to me and he told me, I am working too much. I'm not spending any time with my family. I've been reading about all of these things with short-term rentals, so I want to buy 5 short-term rentals and self-manage them. And I was like, get a divorce attorney. And so I think it's so dependent on your situation. Like, 2 properties is twice the work. And so if I'm able to get the same amount of cash flow with 1 roof, I'm going to go for that. But your tax situation may be different. Maybe you do want both properties so that you can have 2 cost segregation studies in 2 different annual tax years. That's the other like lever that I'm playing with now is I'm doing cost segs on all these. I also have real estate professional status. If anyone's single and interested in that, I think it's a great partnership. Nope, that joke didn't land? Okay. That joke didn't land. All right. That works in the Midwest. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I think it's really dependent on where you are. Yeah, those of you that are like advising your clients, real estate agents, what would you say?
I think you're right that it depends on the situation, right? If you're trying to quit your job, your goal is different than if you're trying to build wealth, equity. I think the magic of our market is that you can get to a number real quick where you can be that private money lender where you can settle for lower rates of return and still have your, $15,000 a month where you're free, right?
Yeah.
But it takes longer to get there.
That's one thing I also haven't done. I haven't pulled out any of my equity. Not because there isn't any, okay? There is equity. Yeah. I just haven't had to yet. And so I'm just letting it sit there. I also, I may jump out of airplanes and travel solo, but I am incredibly conservative when it comes to investing. And so I need these deals to work because I had no backup plan. My mom is a cleaning lady. I never made more than $51,000 from a job. This had to work because I really didn't want a real job. Yeah. All right, I have a few other slides, but I think we're probably up on time. How are we doing on time?
We can do a couple more questions, and if you want to go through the slides, I think we got about 10 minutes probably before we start. Let
me just get to a QR code that I think might be helpful for you guys about how to price MTRs. I apologize if you came here to just talk about MTRs. I hope that I entertained you. And you can always buy my book. But also you guys can ask me anything about midterm rentals. But let me get to that QR code. I don't know where it's at in the slides. No, that's a different one. That one's lame. You guys don't want that. This one. Oops. So this is a really good one if you're wanting to figure out how can I figure out how to price these. So I was talking to someone earlier about their single family home that they're about to move out of. This is a 4-minute video. It will completely underwhelm you. And that's almost on purpose. There's not a lot of data about midterm rentals. So we don't have fancy things like AirDNA and aggregated data from an OTA. But instead, you have this really sophisticated 4-minute video showing you how I price it. If you watch this and you want more, I have a 1-hour masterclass on this that I personally find incredibly boring. But if you guys like numbers and spreadsheets, you will love it. And so just email me and I'll send it to you. Sound good? All right, let's take a few more questions. Yes, so the MTR guests, so who lives in my properties are mostly travel nurses when they're a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit. But as they get bigger, we start talking about displaced insurance policy holders. So a displaced insurance policy holder is an individual or a family who can no longer live in their home because of man-made or natural disaster. Someone that I was talking to earlier was like, yeah, we don't have things like hurricanes and tornadoes here in Seattle. but every 8 seconds, someone is displaced from their home nationwide. So a kid starts a kitchen fire, I start a kitchen fire, do not let me cook for you. A tree falls on your house. There's so many different things that can happen that make a home inhabitable. And when that happens, they contact their insurance company. The insurance company contacts a temporary housing solutions company. Write that down, temporary housing solutions company. And then they contact you, the landlord. And those types of guests, they pay a lot more because the money is coming directly from the insurance company. There's over $1 trillion annually that is given to landlords from insurance companies. And my goal is to have a piece of that pie because those guests are gonna live in your house for upwards of 9 to 24 months because anyone that's ever worked with a contractor, those renovations never happen on time. So that's another type of guest aside from travel medical professionals. Really, you have anyone that needs furnished housing. So someone moves to Seattle from abroad to work at one of your tech companies. They're not ready to buy a home yet. They kind of want to get a lay of the land. They're going to rent from you before they go buy their forever home, which is really cool when you're an agent. It's like, okay, live in my MTR and then I'll be your agent. Then you're getting paid twice. People who, digital nomads. So like I'm an MTR guest. I lived in London this summer in a midterm rental. And we don't get any digital nomads in Omaha. I don't know why. And what else? Interns, construction workers. So if you guys ever driven by like an extended motel, don't stay there. But look at the trucks and they're usually labeled with roofing companies, insurance companies. I have gone as far as like picked up the phone and called them to figure out, hey, do you guys want to save money? Because you have probably like 9 construction workers living in 9 different rooms and they could, move into my 3-bedroom for a quarter of the cost. That's a good way to go about it. But I think the like creme de la creme is that displaced insurance policyholder. How am I finding them? I'm posting on Airbnb, Zillow, apartments.com, and Furnished Finder. If anyone has posted on Furnished Finder and just like posted it, sit it and forget it, you're doing it wrong. It is a lead generation tool. You do have to go in there and mess with it. So that's another thing that my virtual assistant is doing. She's going into Furnished Finder every 2 days when I'm actively looking for a tenant. She's changing the listing description, the title, moving the order of the photos around. Anyone in tech, like if you can help Furnished Finder, like please help them. The algorithm is really silly. I've sat with their top team and they're like, we know, we're working on it. But that has been, I get about 60% of my guests from Furnished Finder. And so if you ever heard anyone talk about Furnished Finder and you're like, Furnished Finder sucks. No, you suck. You're using it wrong. But it is a lead generation tool. So it's not as sit it and forget it as Airbnb. Yeah, so just the way that their algorithm works is just any changes or edits to your profile helps you to be on the first page of results. So I'm also like changing my calendar so that I'm available, like what is today, October 3rd, 4th? So if I was available, let's say September 28th, I would be moving it every day to like today or tomorrow, because that helps with the algorithm as well. Yeah, on how to be nomadic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, that's such a good question. I'm like on this is like my 7th speaking gig in like 8 days. And so you're catching me at like I don't do it, don't be nomadic. No, it's really amazing, but you have to make sure that you're doing what you want to do. Just like with any travel, I love Instagram and TikTok because I do get a lot of travel ideas, but I'm sure someone has had the experience where you go do something like hike Kilimanjaro, and you're like, I don't even like hiking. Like, why am I doing this? And so with nomadic life, you have to really listen to like, what do you really like to do? Like, if you love going to museums, like, don't go to and you hate going to the beach, like, don't go to the beach, like, go to museums. A lot of you are probably the opposite. You're like, I could go to 0 museums and be really happy. So I think following like what you really enjoy is really important, and then go as slow as possible, especially if you're working. If you're working, like going to a city for a week, if you're working Monday through Friday and you actually exercise, like you're not gonna see anything for at least like 3 of those 5 days. And so then you only have one weekend, but if you're leaving on Sunday, well, then your Sunday gets eaten as a travel day. And so I see a lot of digital nomads just like travel way too fast. It really is. I think that that's also good, like real estate investing advice. Like, this is not a race. Like, it's not a race to like 100 units or even like a net worth. I think it has to be on your timeline. I was on a podcast and I told her about my timeline, which I shared with you guys. And she was like, oh, wow, you didn't buy anything for 2 years? Like, do you regret that? And I was like, oh, she's gonna regret asking this. I said, yes. While I was laying on the beach in Brazil with my Venezuelan lover, I thought, man, I wish I had another duplex. And so I think the same is true with traveling. Like, sure, we hear Americans especially go to like 19 European cities, and I'm like, that sounds awful. Like, I want like a slow morning at a French cafe, and that sounds way better to me, but you need to figure out what it sounds really good to you. Yeah, so New Zealand was awesome because don't like try to follow my math, just trust me on this. So like 7 a.m. the next morning, I think was 10 a.m. here. And so I asked my boss, can I start work at 10 a.m.? And so that was okay. I just was like a day off. And then Asia, it sucks. Like, the only thing that's cool about Asia, when I'm working in Asia, is I have a 4 p.m. Pacific call here. That's at 6 or 7 a.m. That's doable. But in Europe, it's at 2 in the morning. And so this summer when I lived in London, like every week I had a 2 a.m. call, and no one felt bad for me because they're like, you live in London. Like, you can handle that once a week. But yeah, you do have to pay attention to time zone. Anything.
Your time.
Yeah. She asked, what takes up the most amount of time? Any deferred maintenance. So I'm paying for the mistakes of frugal Sarah. So there is one of my fourplexes, I always have plumbing issues, and I have that great system that I bragged about where my assistant's handling everything. Well, there's two different types of entrepreneurs. There's someone that can't delegate, and then there's someone that delegates and doesn't check that person's work. That's me. And so those plumbing issues were starting to add up, and had I really had my like eye on the ball, I would have gone in and fixed like the root of the problem, because I finally had the money to. But at the beginning of my investing, I didn't have any money. And so I was just like Band-Aid that shit. But now that I have money, I would rather go in and like really fix the problem, because it will save you time later on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. I actually had my cleaner at my property yesterday. So I have 2 cleaners. One I adore, she's amazing. I could like own property with this woman. She's so good at her job. The other, not so much. So that cleaner in a different city was there yesterday. And I knew that I needed to be at my phone because I knew that she was going to message me and have questions, but also she was notorious for like messaging me a problem and then being like, I left. And I'm like, can you just like wait 45 minutes for me to answer? So that's the reality. So just yesterday I had a turnover at one of my units. I'm now having to pay what I call my runner, like a $15, $20 an hour person, to go over there and fix this thing that my cleaner, I guess, is not capable of doing, buying paper towels and leaving them in the kitchen. Yeah, I need a new cleaner in Des Moines if anyone knows anyone. But my cleaner in Omaha, that woman, like, she handles all issues and just sends me an invoice. And so I'm never involved, which is great because I have 8 units right next door to each other. So I have more turnovers. But let's talk quickly about the amount of turnovers. So on average, my guests stay 87 nights. That was my average for 2023. So if we do quick math, that's 4 turnovers a year. Granted, I have 11 units, so that's a lot more turnovers. But I have one unit, the up-down duplex that you guys saw, that tenant stayed like 380 days. So that's 380 days of silence and bliss, and it's amazing. And I did hike Kilimanjaro and was able to like go completely off grid because I didn't have any turnovers during those 9 days. Yeah, I think hiring someone who believes in taking ownership. And so maybe that is someone who has equity in the company or a profit share of my cash flow. I do think it's possible. I mean, I was incredibly eager to work for that woman that I worked for. Like, I would have done anything to make that work. because I admired her so much, and I saw that if I worked really hard, it would be like hopping on a rocket ship. And so I think finding someone who's really eager to learn and willing to work and actually work, I think that it absolutely is possible for me to actually step away. And I do step away. Like, you guys, I'm working on just my property management or my properties. Some weeks is like 45 minutes. Other weeks is like 2 hours with this portfolio. And I'm doing a full, like, almost to the studs renovation right now. And I'm really not involved. Yeah, so the first thing that I did is I went to Facebook. So I see some young people. There are still people using Facebook. And I would go to these Facebook groups. I'd just type in real estate investing Austin or San Antonio, any combination of like buy and sell San Antonio. And I join all these Facebook groups, and I would really build relationships with these people. So I would find out like who's buying a lot of properties. That's what I did in Des Moines. This woman, Amy Gross, she's not gross at all. She bought like 40 units in like one summer. And I was like, that girl's gonna be friends with me. And so turns out we are friends. Every time I go to Des Moines, we go out, we grab drinks. And so when I have a problem, like a broken garage door, I'm texting Amy, hey, who's your garage door guy? And building relationships that way. But a lot of those relationships were built before ever stepping foot in that state. So again, I am a go, go, go kind of person, but anyone know the DISC assessment? Yeah. So like I'm a really high D, and so I hate inefficiency. So it makes me organized. So I have spreadsheets for everything. So I have a spreadsheet for due diligence, so everything that's gonna happen while I'm under contract, everything that's gonna happen after, and then everything that's gonna happen to furnish a unit. And so I have a line item for every single item, including silverware, that I'm gonna purchase. And then I have in column B, like a nice little drop-down menu that somebody else made. And it's like ordered, delivered, opened, and that's how I'm tracking everything. Otherwise, my personality, I'd end up like buying like 5 toasters. And so I have to keep everything organized in that spreadsheet. And I'm having everything laid out. I have all the hyperlinks while I'm under contract. And then the moment I close, like the day I close, I'm opening a new business credit card after close. Calm down, lenders. I'm opening a new credit card because I want to use that credit card to do the sign-up bonus, to get miles, because I have like 1.7 million miles and I need more, I guess. I don't know. And what I do is I use that credit card, and I'm purchasing everything like the day I close. And so I'm not waiting until after I close to then go measure and figure out, like, do I buy an L-shaped couch or this kind of couch? I have all of those questions answered while I'm under contract. And so sometimes that means I'm paying that runner or maybe my agent to go over and measure again, like, will this couch actually fit? Because I don't have measurements. I'm doing all of that while I'm under contract. The fastest I've ever furnished one was the up-down that you saw. And because granted I was in town, which helps, but the day I closed, I had everything ordered and I had that thing furnished in 4 days. Wow. Yeah, that's not realistic, but what is realistic is like 9 or 10 days. And don't get caught up. I see a lot of investors get really caught up on like, I want that specific rug. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, I want fast, because we only make money as real estate investors if someone's in our house paying us. And so every day does matter. So even if I'm in love with this rug, I can never get it in time. So then I buy a different rug. Usually it's the couch is the problem, though.
Do you buy new furniture or you buy
Yeah, so he asked if I buy new furniture. So I used to do the Facebook Marketplace thing, and I would like drive all over town. Oh, that sounded bad, Ethan. Mm-hmm. And I would drive all over town, but for anyone that's ever bought anything off Facebook Marketplace, not only is it like dangerous, but also it's just annoying. Like, they're not messaging you, or you get there and the couch actually sucks or smells like smoke. But at the beginning, I was all about it. Again, I didn't have very much money. And so if you are all about Facebook Marketplace, one thing I do recommend is when you go somewhere, especially if they're moving, ask them if you can come in, if they look safe. Girls, don't go alone. And be like, can I have that? I one time like bought a girl's entire thing. I was just going for her Keurig. But I literally bought her apartment was Anthropologie. I was like, yes, I want all of this. And I bought everything. And I'm pretty good at negotiating, so I think I spent like $200 and bought her entire living room. It was amazing. I was like, oh yeah, it'll be such a pain in the ass to keep talking to people on Facebook. I'll just take it. So that was worth it. But what I can tell you from experience is just buying new, having it delivered to the house, and then hiring someone on TaskRabbit to put it together is definitely better. Definitely. Yeah, for midterm rentals? Yeah, let's look at some of these. Okay, so here's an example. This is one of those fourplexes I talked about. I actually own both. So I own the blue one and the tan one. These are all 1 bedroom, 1 bath units. I purchased for $328. Yes, that was market value in 2021. And current rent would have been $775 a unit for a long-term rental. So $3,100 with a PITI of 2003, you're looking at like $167 of cash flow for the whole building. And then here you guys see my 5% CapEx, 5% maintenance, 10% property management, 8% vacancy. Don't ever use 2% utilities and lawn care. I just use that because I actually know the utilities and lawn care. But this is not a great deal, right? Like, I'm not excited about $167 for cash flow. So I'm really glad that I have midterm rentals as like a tool in my toolbox, because keep your eyes on 3,100. This is what happens when you turn it into a midterm rental. So instead of $775 a unit, you're looking at $1,875. That's pretty good. So then you're looking at $25,000 for the building, and that's pretty conservative. I'm a little bit closer to 4K in cash flow. Let me show you one other example. So here's another example. Sorry, I did spend $183,000. So that number is wrong. But you can see here is a perfect example. Long-term rent is $850. Midterm is $1,900. Today, I actually have this bottom unit listed. Actually, I have a showing going on right now, a virtual showing for the long-term unit downstairs, and I have it listed for $1,100. So maybe, so obviously not 2x in this case, if I'm able to get $1,100. But all day long, I could rent the long term for $850, and I'm anywhere between $1,900 and like $2,200 for a midterm rental. And then I think I have one more example. No, I don't. Another example I'll give you is up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I met an investor there. He has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that he can get $1,900 as a long term. He just secured a displaced insurance policy holder for $3,800. Yeah. Again, go for the displaced insurance policy holders. Yeah. If it's only a couple $100 more, so for example, that very first house I showed you guys, my LTR, maybe I could get $400 more as in a midterm rental. So even though I wrote the book on midterm rentals, that thing is staying a long-term rental because it's not worth it. By the time I pay for snow removal, lawn care, utilities, and furniture, it's not worth it. Yeah. It's not so straightforward because it really depends on what you think you can do with the property. Are you going to keep the property for 10 years? Yeah, I probably would turn it into a midterm rental because, you know, $500 over 10 years is worth it. If you know you're going to sell it next year, I think it's different. Yeah, good question though. Yes?
What about buying in college?
It's funny, I get this question all the time. I am nervous about college towns because I think you're overpaying. And I think there's a lot of deferred maintenance. With that being said, you can cash flow so much. So as long as you can avoid those two things, not paying too much or buying something with deferred maintenance, I think it's a great strategy. I'd love to own in my college town. I think mostly just like emotionally, which I try not to make investment decisions on emotion. But I know people that are making great money doing exactly that. Yeah, but those are the two things I worry about. Right here.
What is your...
Yeah, so that house that I was just talking about was my first house hack. So I kept it rent by the room, and they just kept filling each other. And now I have I had a mom and a daughter live there, which I loved because she knew that and funny, guess what happened to her? She got engaged. I'm not kidding. If anyone's single, move to Prairie Village, Kansas. I'll be your landlord. It works. And so she lived there for 2 years. And now a new couple moved in. They're already engaged. So I told them they definitely wouldn't break up if they moved in. And so now I have someone renting the whole house. Yeah, good question. For $3,100.
Oh, wow.
I'm shocked. Like when my agent and friend told me that I should list it for $3,100, I was like, why? I thought no way would anyone rent it for that. I was at $2,300, but that was like 4 years earlier, and then I rented for $2,500. So unknowing to me, like rent had, and that was market rent. It wasn't like, I mean, I am an investor. It had gone up that much. Yeah, I think it's all here. For MTR, definitely if you're going displaced insurance policy holder, it has to be a 3.2 or above. It's really hard to get a 3.1 to work, just because they probably are coming from a 3.2. For anything below or anything that's not a displaced insurance policy holder, it's rare that travel nurses want a room together. I think people think, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. Pad splits coming into my market. I'm gonna rent to travel nurses. They're usually making enough money that they don't have to have roommates anymore. So it's very rare that they want to. I also have a lot of travel nurses that rent 2 bedrooms from me because their husband or wife is a digital nomad and can work remote, which is why they love being a travel nurse. And so they really love having like an extra bedroom or even an office space. So my 1.1s and my 2.2s work really well for travel nurses. And it's also great because I think buying anything, like if you were to buy a duplex, that's a 1.1, that's not very attractive to a lot of buyers, including investors, because it doesn't make a great long-term rental. So that can kind of sift out some of the competition when it comes to purchasing. Yeah, I think it all works. And that's not like me selling my book. No, I actually have met investors that like make it work. I have loved all of these questions and I will stick around. I can see you lingering. I think we're ready to wrap things up.
We've got another half hour or so of the space, so there's
Amazing.
definitely more time to keep chatting with each other. And Sarah, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Or should I put a slide up here
Let's
so that
skip forward.
anyone who didn't get their question answered can't catch you
if you
before
guys would
leave.
like to go to ilovemtr.com, someone in marketing made me buy that URL, so please pay for it by buying a book. So this will be for 10% off the book if you want that, and then I'll skip forward and I'll throw up my Instagram, my email. Really do reach out to me. I would not be standing here today if I had not been sitting in the room like you guys are and then actually followed up with the speaker. So much so that I made her hire me. And so I highly recommend continue to come to things like this, but then go home and do the work. If MTRs are not your thing, and last week you had AJ Osborne talk about self-storage, and last week you were interested in self-storage, like don't be a squirrel. Like figure out what is the thing that you actually want to do, whether it's MTRs or not, and go do that. So I'll throw up my last slide. Oh my gosh, look how much, I had so much, you guys.
Yeah, really, we're gonna have you back and do a whole second version.
Oh yeah, oh, we gotta do it all over again. Let's do that. So I'll leave that up there. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Are you running off right now? Or
No,
are
no,
you,
no,
okay, sounds good. Cool. Can we get one more big round for Sarah? That was really good. I think y'all would have kept us up all night with your questions because Sarah had such good answers. One thing that I am taken away from Sarah's talk, and Kara kind of touched on this with appreciation, it's so interesting that there is so many options for low money down investing in real estate. And here in Seattle, we tend to say like, oh, you need to house hack, you need to house hack locally, and you can buy a $800,000 property for 3% down, and isn't that a better investment than a $200,000 property in the Midwest for 20 or 25% down? And Sarah kind of shows that the reality of house hacking, the reality of kind of leverage works in a lot of different ways. And it may look different for a tech worker in Seattle than it does for a location independent person in Kansas City, but it works, right? So that's kind of the message that we've been preaching this whole time. So it's super cool to see someone take a completely different take on it and get to the same results that we have house hacking here. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Oh, we need a...